What is up, friends? Welcome to episode 4 of the Build a Mind podcast. I'm your host, Trevor, and today I've got a special episode for you. So today I'm going to be tearing apart, breaking down, and setting up this machine. This is a S9 ASIC. It's about 15 terahash, 13 terahash, somewhere around that. It has 109 joules per terahash efficiency. It's not that great, but it has worked well as a heater for me. Lots of cool things in this episode. I'm really excited to kind of just show you how to break this machine down, what to do. A couple things I want to go over before we get into the actual episode, how to do all this stuff. I just want to say thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for listening and giving me your time. I know that it means a lot to you. It means a lot to me. And I'm really excited to see where this show can go. I want to see what we can accomplish and, what we can really build. And I want to build it with you guys together. You guys are going to learn from me. You're going to learn from my mistakes, all that good stuff. You know why we're here. I'm very grateful to be in this position and get the opportunity to do this. This is a lot of fun, and it's something that I really enjoy. So with that, we're going to talk about why we should have these. Why do we need ASIC miners, ASIC heaters? Why do we want them? What is the considerations for when we start deciding if we're going to buy one or not? Those kinds of things. And with that, we'll get into the episode, guys. So the first thing that you're going to want to think about when you're, deciding what machine you want to purchase for your situation is, number one, what kind of miner are you trying to be? Are you trying to be a large-scale industrial miner? Because you're not going to be able to accomplish that in your house. So if you've got these grand dreams of being a large-scale 1 megawatt, 3 megawatt, 25 megawatt mine operator, this video isn't necessarily going to explain how to do that. I'm going to show you guys how to set them up in your house, get them running inside your home, those kinds of things. So this video may not be tailored to you. If you are somebody who wants to run these in your house, in your basement, in your shed, backyard, you want to run 2 to 20, somewhere between there, then this is definitely a good episode for you guys. Either way, I think maybe you'll come away with something. I don't know. You guys decide. So when you're considering which ASIC you want to buy, there's a couple things we want to think about. These machines are not cheap and they're not necessarily easy to plug in. This machine here, it has a couple different components, and all the components are very similar to the other machines, but this one's a little bit different. So we have the actual machine itself, and if you look on here, you have 3 hash boards. I don't know if you can see that very well. So there's 3 of those there, and we'll break this machine down here in a bit. But so there's 3 hash boards, a control board, a power distribution unit, and a power cable, and an Ethernet cable. That's really all you need to get this thing up and running. This is a S9 from Bitmain. I paid, I want to say $83 on Amazon. So if you guys want to pick one of these up, I could probably even get you one from Scott, super cheap. So these machines are super easy to deal with, super cheap. They're bricks, man. They're so hard to destroy or break or anything like that. There was a time when people were throwing these machines away because they were just not worth anything. And to the same extent, they're still not worth very much. For me, this machine has been bountiful. I was able to reduce my heating costs by about 20% and stack, $40 to $50 in the last month, or the last couple months, stacking Bitcoin. So in a way, it is much more efficient than my standard 3,500 watt heater, but it's not as efficient as, say, an S19 or an S21. Just keep that in mind. So when considering what machines you're going to purchase, the first thing you need to consider is your living situation, okay? I'm going to show you guys a couple of different ways to hook these up in the future, because there's different methods to do it. This one here, it's not so bad because it's just a 110 volt plug. Just plug it directly into the wall. You're good. All is well. But for the newer machines, the S19s, the S21s, S17s, all of these require a 220 volt plug. So whether or not you have one in your house is going to be, well, you definitely have them in your house, but whether or not you can use it is another story. So I'm going to go over a couple scenarios. The first scenario is you're a homeowner and you want to hardwire this thing directly, not this thing, but an S19 or an S21. You want to hardwire that bad boy directly into your home. Well, if you're not an electrician and you're not handy, contractor kind of person, I don't recommend just getting in there and getting your hands dirty and trying to make this work. Hire an electrician. It may cost a little bit of money, but it's going to be in your best interest to hire an electrician, get them out here, install the plug properly, make sure that it all works. Now, if you're like me, you're going to say screw the electrician and you're going to do it yourself because you can, and I would rather stack $2,000 worth of sats than pay somebody $2,000 to come in and wire up a plug that I can definitely do myself. So that's the first scenario. The second scenario is if you're renting. Now, I understand renters, you can't just go and rip holes in your wall. So what I'm going to tell you right now is not a recommendation. It's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you guys how to do it. And if you do it on your own, then it's up to you. Now, I do believe this is safe. I believe that it's effective, but I am not liable for anything that you guys do to your homes. Keep that in mind. So what you're going to do if you're renting, you're going to keep in mind that you have at least two 220 outlets in your house. You're going to have one for your dryer and one for your oven. Now, I recommend going to the one for your dryer because it's a little bit easier to move the dryer back and forth, at least in my house, in my situation it is. It might be different for you. But what you're going to do is you're going to go and look at that plug behind your dryer. You're going to pull the dryer plug out. You're going to look at the prongs on it. Because what you want to do is you want to go to the hardware store and go and buy another male plug that is going to fit in that female socket. Now, once you've bought that plug, I think they're like 20 or 30 bucks. Once you've bought that plug, you're going to come back and you're going to have a power distribution unit with your S19 or S21. Now that power distribution unit can be directly, or PDU, can be directly hardwired into that socket or the plug. So what I'm going to do, and I'll show you guys videos on this later as we dive deeper into the ASIC heater build that I'm currently building. I'll show you guys that. But you can directly wire that PDU to your socket, and then you're just going to plug that socket into the wall. You've got power to PDU. Bada bing, bada boom, we're done. Anytime you need to use the dryer, you just unplug that thing, plug it back in. Good. So that's your living situation. That's kind of like what you're going to want to do based on whether or not you're renting or buying. And then also, obviously, if you're renting and you're plugging into the back of your dryer plug there, then having a specific place to do these is going to be a little bit more difficult. So this scenario isn't necessarily for you guys. But for the guys who are renting your home or owning your home, you guys have decided to hardwire a plug into a specific room or a shed or a basement. Figuring out where that's going to go is going to be the next thing. And part of figuring that out is how many miners you're going to have in that room. Are you going to max it out eventually and you're going to put all 15 or 20 miners in that room, or are you going to have 5 or 6? The second thing you're going to want to think about is ventilation. Okay, it's going to get very, very hot in whatever room you have those miners running. So what you want to make sure is that you're bringing cool air in from outside and exhausting hot air back to the outside. Now, if you want to reuse that heat, there are different ways, and I'm playing with a system right now where there's a baffle plate connected to a thermostat, and that thermostat sends a signal to the baffle plate. The baffle plate switches the air going in to either divert outside or divert inside. Now, what that is just to make sure that if it gets too hot in my house, I'll have a place for the air to dump out and exhaust if it gets too hot in my house. And I'm only running one machine. So if you're running 10 machines in your basement, you're definitely going to want to make sure that you have a way for that air to escape. Otherwise, it's going to get so hot inside your basement or your house that it's going to be unbearable. You can actually go and watch Peter Saddington's video on GPU mining way back in the day when he melted the walls, like the paint off the walls in his garage because he was running all these GPU miners. So that's to say that it gets really, really hot. These things produce quite an amount of heat, and it can be a little intense. So make sure that you're exhausting the air somewhere and you've got a place for clean air to come in. Also keep in mind you want to filter that air before it goes through the machine. That's very important. Otherwise, you're going to gunk up all the hash boards and stuff like that. And we're going to tear this down in a little bit. I'll show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. So after you've thought about your living situation, and we've kind of thought about our power consideration, how are we getting the power to where we need to get the power to, we want to think about our electric rate, because our electric rate is really going to define whether or not this is even feasible for us. With heat recapture, reusing that electricity that creates heat and reusing that heat, you can save a little bit, but often it's negligible. So if your power rate is sub 8 cents, sub 9 cents, generally you're going to be okay. You're not really going to have to worry too much about the efficiency of your machine right now. You will have to worry about it in the future as it gets more and more difficult to mine on the network. That's neither here nor there. So you're going to want to find your power rate. How do you find your power rate? Well, you're going to go type in your utility. So like my utility is Central Lincoln PUD. So what I would do is I would go to Central Lincoln's website. I would go to their scheduling, their rate scheduling, and you're going to look through that massive list of documents. Really, you're only looking for one piece of paper, and that's going to say residential. Residential rate is going to be how much you're paying per kilowatt hour, and then it may drop down. So for me, I'm at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and then after so much usage, it gets dropped down to 8 cents a kilowatt hour. So I'm actually using more with this machine, so it's going to drop me down to the 8 cents a kilowatt hour range, and 8 is okay. It's not perfect, but it's better than 10 to 12. If you're getting 10 to 12 cents a kilowatt hour, it's not easy for you to do this, and you may want to think about getting the most efficient machines, and then also what kind of things can you use that heat for. If you can use that heat for heating a chicken coop or a garden or a garage or something like that, it's often negligible and it's not a big deal. But when you don't have a use for these heater for the heat and you're just kind of mining Bitcoin, when you're paying 12 cents a kilowatt hour, you're not making any money. You're actually losing money and you're paying to play. So that's really not the name of the game here. Is like, yeah, you guys want to secure the network. I want to secure the network, but also I want to not spend money. Maybe I don't make money, but I don't want to spend money. So we're trying to not spend money here and increase our livelihoods. So thinking about our electric rate, all of those things, the next thing that we're going to think about is like, what miners are we going to plug in? You know where they're going to go. You know how you're getting the power to them. You've got, PDUs or whatever. You're going to get PDUs because there are different ones. Are you going to go with the brand new top of the line S21s? You're going to go with the Avalon M63Ss or whatever they are. Like, there's so many different types of ASICs out there. Depending on what you want to do is going to really depict whether or not, like, you buy 5 miners, you buy 3 miners. If you're really trying to be efficient, you're trying to have as many miners as possible, you might buy 15. But how much money do you have to spend? Because each one of these machines can get up there in price. Like, even through Scott's Crypto Mining, an S21 is, I want to say, $4,500 after shipping or before shipping. I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me. I don't want Scott to yell at me. But at the end of the day, you got to think about how many miners you're going to be plugging in. So most houses, most residential places are 300 amp service, and you want to leave about 20 to 25% for regular home usage. So that's going to leave you roughly, I'm not good at napkin math, guys. I'm just going to say 250 amps. It's going to leave you roughly 250 amps, 240 amps, something around there. And you want to make sure that you're not overloading that. So understanding the power or the power requirements and what you have access to is very important. So don't make the mistake of going and purchasing 10 S21s when you can't even necessarily connect 10 S21s to your network, to your house, because you can't use that much juice. Something to just keep in mind as you're moving through this. So for me, I'm going with the S19s because the S19s are a cheaper unit. They are about 120 to 110 terahash per machine. To get to where I want to be, I'm going to need about 10 of them. So I'm going to get 10 of these machines over time, and I'll have them running in different locations in my house, at my dad's place, all that good stuff. But the first machine, and actually there's one back here in a box, that one's going over to dad's house. But I have another one at my house that is going to be used for my heater build that you guys have no doubt heard me talk about. All right, so a couple more things. I'm going to show you guys how to connect to a pool on the computer, so I'm not going to explain that right now. But we've chosen our miners. Now we need, and we have them, they're all ready to plug in. Now we need to set up our network. Setting up your network is really easy, but it's not something that you should take lightly, especially if you have, 100, 150 miners. The more miners you have, the more that you want to take your network security seriously. So with one miner, two miners, it's not a big deal, and you can plug directly into your router and get going. When I get my, full 10 miners up and running in my house, I'm going to actually invest in a much better router. And the reason is because you want security features on the router so that you can protect your network and make sure that none of your configurations are getting changed, because you've got to configure the pool settings on this, and the pool settings kind of tell the Bitcoin where to go, that sort of thing. So just keep that in mind. You want to make sure that your network is secured. You want to make sure that you're not just running off of somebody else's Wi-Fi, all that kind of stuff. So a few things we're going to need before we actually do the deep dive on how to break this machine down, how to install the firmware, download the firmware, all that good stuff. You need a few things. Obviously, you need your unit, your PDU, your power cable, and your Ethernet cable, but you're also going to need an SD card. If you're going to run, oh shoot, it did it again. There it is. So if you're going to run a firmware that's not Bitmain or microBT or whatever, you're going to need a micro SD card. You're going to have to flash this card with a Balena etcher or something like that and download the Brains OS. I'm going to show you guys how to do that, so don't worry. But once you get Brains OS on here and you've swapped the jumper ports on the CPU, you can plug this thing in and get it running. So you're going to need a IP scanner, you're going to need an SD card. You want to make sure that SD card is no more than about 4 gigabytes. If it's too large, it won't work. Let's see. You're going to need pool configuration files. You're going to need 3 different pool configuration files if you want to do it properly. That's just in case one pool goes down, you can connect to a secondary pool and still get the hash rate that you're wanting. Now, pools are something you want to understand is they're all different, but they're all very similar. So most of the pools are actually subsidiaries of the main 3 pools. So while Brains OS might sound like it's a separate pool from Antpool, it's actually a subsidiary of Antpool, and the block templates are exactly the same. So decentralization becomes a problem with pools. We're not going to talk about that today. We're just going to talk about how to get the machine up and running. So when you have all of your pool configuration data, you can go through the steps and we can enter that information in. I'm going to show you guys how to do that here in a later step. Okay, real quick, I want to talk about the mastermind group or mastermind club that Scott offered and I and the rest of the team put on at Scott's Crypto Mining. The mastermind club is your gateway to all the information that you need to build and complete any mining operation that you might have. Now, this is specifically for the person who is into Bitcoin but doesn't understand mining and really wants to know how to mine, or understands mining a little bit, has done a little bit of mining but really wants to up their game and step into the space a little bit more. The mastermind group, the mastermind club, has weekly accountability sessions where myself, Scott, John, and a couple other people show up there to, talk about your projects, talk about what's been hindering you or the growth that you've made, and really hold your feet to the fire. Every single month, you get access to a 1-hour deep dive on critical topics like contract development, site procurement, things like that. Next month, we're going to be going over the differences between air versus immersion mining. Very cool, really cool stuff. I'm excited about all that stuff. So if you guys are interested, you can go to to.tool/mastermind. That's I'll have it linked in the description of the show. Okay, I apologize, guys. You can see right here. So it's to.tools/mastermind-club. That's the place that you're gonna want to go. And really, like I said, it's a great place to find community and learn about what we offer at Scott's Crypto Mining. You get access to minimum order quantities. So if you only want to order one machine, you can do that through the Mastermind Club. It also gives you project roadmaps, all the good stuff. Really helps you progress along your journey through the mining space and understand what's going to be needed to take that next step. So guys, join the Mastermind Club. Come talk with me. Come join me. It's $100 a month, but I really feel that it's worth it, especially with all the value that you get from it. All right, guys, we're going to go into the breakdown of the build now. So let's get into it. Alrighty, guys, so here we're going to be taking the S9 apart. I'm going to show you guys all the separate individual parts. The CPU board, which is here, I will pull out the different hash boards here, and I'll take off the PDU. I'll pop the fans off as well, just so that you can see the process of that, and we'll give it a quick cleaning. This one's actually been cleaned before, so it's not going to need a really deep cleaning today. That's okay. I'm just going to show you the process of how it's done so that when you get your new machine in, if you get a used one, you know how to take it apart, clean it up, get it to where it's in optimal running condition, and make sure that you've got a good running heater. So with that, let's get started. First things first, you're going to want to disconnect all of these cables here. So if you can see, there's a bunch of yellow and black ones, and then there's these kind of pinkish white ones here. These black and yellow ones are just the cables from the PDU to all of the hash boards and the control board. You don't have to worry about any of those being in the right place or the same place. They can go in different places. There are different lengths on the leads, so some places make them easier than others, but just keep in mind that it doesn't matter necessarily where they go. So you're going to unplug them, and once you've got that all done, we can move on to the next part. So I've got the power distribution unit unplugged. You can see all the different connections here, so I'll move that out of the way. We don't really need to do anything with that. You can tear it apart and you can clean it out if you want to. I haven't yet, so I'm not going to do that in this video, but it's actually super easy. You just pop the 4 screws here on the fans, and then you'll see some screws here on the side. Get those popped off, and then the outside of the metal housing you see here should just pop off, giving you access to inside, and it just a quick blowout with a can of condensed air should give it exactly what it needs. Okay, so now you can see the 3 different hash boards here, all the ports. You can see the fans. Both sides. So this one is the intake fan, and this one is the exhaust fan. We're gonna take off the exhaust fan. We actually don't need to take off the intake fan and pop these off. So when you're unplugging these, they can be a little bit of a pain. So just be very careful. You might have to use a pair of pliers or a small flat head screwdriver just to pop them off. You don't wanna break these. If you break them, you're gonna need new ones. So it's very important. These just come off very simply. You can take them off the control board if you want to. I'm going to do that just to demonstrate. Super easy. They come off. And again, it doesn't matter which one these connect to as long as the hash boards are connected to the control board. So we've got those out of the way. Move those out. Now you can see the hash board does want to slide. Something I want you guys to keep in mind, if you are swapping out the firmware on this board, you want to use an SD card. The SD card will get stuck in between I don't know if you can see it very well. There's a little port right here where the SD card goes. And when this CPU board slides back, the control or the SD card doesn't like to fit through that slot. So it's kind of a pain in the butt. I would recommend leaving your SD card out throughout this entire process. So we're just pull that out, set it off over to the side over here. So yeah, that slides. Now what we have to do in order to get the hash boards out is we have to pull these 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the side here. I'll get those pulled out, and then we'll be able to slide the hash boards. And when you're pulling these screws, be very careful. They do like to strip if you're not careful, especially if they've never been pulled off before. So just be really, really gentle when you're pulling them off. There's actually only 3 on this one because I lost 1. Don't lose your screws, guys. Make sure you put them in a good spot, as I literally sit them over here in the middle of the table. It's good to have like a magnetic cup with you. That really helps when you're tearing these down. I didn't think about that. I should have brought one, but I didn't. So, all right, so pop that off. You guys can easily see down into the hash boards, 3 individuals. We'll pop those out and you can see what they look like on the inside. Again, I've already cleaned this unit, so it doesn't need another cleaning. I'm not going to do a deep cleaning on it, but I will show you guys the process of cleaning these. Okay, so now you can see directly into this. I'll give that fan a good blowout with some condensed air, and then we can slide the hash board out, or the control board out. Put that off to the side here. All right, so a couple of things I want to show you on this control board. Let me zoom in a little bit. So if you're looking at this hash board, there are 4 little jumper pins over here. Okay, now these pins are kind of important, and if you're trying to run if you're trying to run the firmware from the SD card, which is in this slot right here, you're going to want to make sure that this 4th jumper, the one closest to the edge, is offset. So I'll show you guys a video or a demonstration on Brains OS. They have a great install video and shows you how to do it. But this last jumper here, when you first get it, it's going to be in this position. Oh, it doesn't want to work. My little jumper lead is broken. Hold on one second, guys. So it's going to look like this when you first get it. I don't know if you can see that very well. I'll have a better example in the next thing. But you're going to take that last lead, the one closest to me, closest to the edge. You're going to pop it off, and you're just going to move it over. So it should be an offset on these jumper leads. There's 4 different ones. It should go to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right. Okay. So that's important if you want to run from SD card. Otherwise, it's going to pull the firmware from the existing circuitry. So that's your control board. Just give it a good dusting, dust out the ports, all that stuff. If you want to clean it, my recommendation is either an ultrasonic cleaner, or if you don't have one of those, because those are expensive and we're plebs, you can take 99 ISO. Make sure you get 99 because anything else won't evaporate properly. So you don't want to leave any moisture or anything on these boards when you're working with them. It's very important. Just keep that in mind. So I'm going to give this a really quick cleaning. We'll speed through the process of it. You guys don't have to watch the whole thing, but this is basically what you're doing. You just want to kind of clean the dust off, make sure that it's not super dirty, and make sure that you don't destroy any of the connections. So just be gentle. Gentle is your friend. All right, moving on. And I've already done with the hash boards, so I don't really need to do this again. I'm going to zoom you guys out. So I'm not going to clean these hash boards again. I will give them a quick light dusting just because. And that really all you have to do is just take these and just go through the individual heat sinks, make sure that they're all blown out. Same thing on the other side. And the reason you want to clean these regularly is because especially if you're using them in your home or something like that, there's a lot of dust and particulates in the air, and obviously it's a fan that pushes air through this thing. So these heat sinks dissipate the heat from the board itself, but when there's a bunch of dust buildup and grime buildup on these heat sinks, they don't dissipate the heat as well as they should, which can cause problems later down the road when you're actually hashing on some higher grade equipment. So the new S21s and the S19s are very finicky with their hash boards. They don't like to go over a certain temp, so making sure that your boards are clean is very important. I'm not going to wipe these down because, like I said, I've already cleaned these. So we're just going to give them all a quick dusting. Make sure there's nothing crazy in there, no dust or dirt. Stack it over to the side. Okay, so those are your hash boards, guys. Super easy to really take them apart. It's not something you should be afraid of. The only thing I would say is if your machine is under warranty, you don't want to pull these apart because Bitmain, MicroBT, Canon, all the manufacturers have a really good way of telling whether or not these have been tampered with. So if you ever have to send your machine back for a warranty recall and you've done something like this, the likelihood that you're going to get a recall or going to get a warranty replacement is very low. So just keep that in mind. Things to, think about. Mainly for the purpose of this video, it's me showing you my very first mining heater. I call them ASIC heaters. I used this S9 for that, and these are just the components on the inside. So I'm going to put it back together. We'll time lapse through that real fast, and then we'll get to the rest of the video. Doesn't matter where these hash boards go. Again, nothing really matters placement wise as long as they are in their home. They have to be in their respective homes. The S21, the S19, the newer models are a little bit more in depth when trying to take these things apart. Make sure you do it in the right order. You got to put your CPU board in first. I did that wrong. But as I was saying, the newer models are a little bit more in depth. They have bigger hash boards. They have a lot more components. Well, not more components. They have bigger components. So it's really the same amount of stuff. You've got your hash boards, your control board, you have your power supply, those kinds of things. So it's not anything crazy, but they are bigger and they have more screws. So it's not like it's more difficult to do it on one of the other machines. It's just a little bit of a different process. Maybe one of these days I'll bring in the S19 and we can give it a breakdown so that everybody can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so that's that. Now we'll put the fan back on. Orientation doesn't really matter as long as it's in, like it's blowing in and out. So this is the exhaust fan, so it should be like, make sure it's not facing this way, make sure it's facing this way. As long as you do a opposite procedure of the way that you pulled it apart, generally you should be fine. Yeah. So put those back on, we'll get it all plugged in, and then we'll fire her up to make sure she runs properly, and then we'll get on to the next part of the video as I'm over here losing screws. Don't lose your screws, guys. All right, I'm gonna plug the fans back in. Doesn't matter where they go, just make sure they're plugged in and they're secure. Boom, boom. Same thing with the hash boards. Make sure that the hash boards are all plugged in. The orientation is right on the plug. Doesn't matter which ones it goes to. I usually just go 1, 2, 3. Okay, those are plugged in. Now comes for the PDU. Super easy. Like I said before, these yellow and black plugs do not matter where they go. There is an orientation where they plug in and it sits comfortably where it is right now. So just with that in mind, you might want to make sure, like if you want to leave it sitting properly. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. Just make sure they're plugged in. All right, and the last thing is just to make sure that your SD card is in the slot, and this machine's ready to plug in. It's ready to hook up to the network and make sure that it's ready to go. So we're gonna move into that. So when you guys first start running this machine after you've installed the new firmware on it, it's going to have a boot up process. It takes a little bit for the computer to actually recognize that it is running off of a different card. This computer's been running off of Brains OS for a while now, so it's not something I have to deal with. It's actually just going to run like normal, so that's what you hear. Right now it's doing a little boot up process. It's just trying to kind of configure itself, so you'll hear this really loud noise, but in about 10 seconds, 15 seconds, it'll shut back down and go back to a regular state of operation. And there it goes. So we got air coming in this side. We have air coming out this side. And it's hashing. It's not connected to an Ethernet port right now, so it's actually not registering on the network that it is creating Bitcoin. So it's not actually doing that. But for this purposes, I don't really need to have this connected. I just wanted to show you guys the process of it. All right, on to the next one. All right, guys. So in this episode, in this section, we're going to be showing you guys how to install Brains OS onto a SD card and then onto your S9. Now, this can be run on several other types of machines, and Brains actually has a documentation. So right here, let's see. So what you'll first do is you'll need to go to brains.com and find this page. If you type in Brains OS, you'll find it. So just come straight to here. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to the machine that you're specifically trying to get this on. There are different ones, so keep that in mind. So I want it on my S9. We're going to go now. So click download now, and then go over here, find your machine. So we're using the S9. So I'm going to download that. Now, when you get to this page here, this is important. You don't need these. You need this one, the run from SD. So make sure that you click download on that one. I've already got it downloaded, so I don't need to do it again. So now that you've got that downloaded, make sure that you have a SD card inserted so that you can do this process. You'll need a drive flashing program like the Lena Etcher. So that's what I use to make it happen for me. Okay, so get yourself a drive flash program. What you're going to do is you're going to flash from file. Super easy. We're going to go and find the file that we just downloaded. There it is, right there. That's the file that we need. We're going to open that, select our target, and flash. Once that is done, you can pull it out and install it into your S9. Now, one little thing I want to show you before you install it in your S9, there is something you need to see. So we're going to go here. We're going to go documents. That's important. Read the docs. So I recommend you guys read this, especially if you're using a different machine, so that you know how to install it, update it, all of that stuff properly. But I'm going to go down here. We're going to go to the install OS on the S9. Now, this is important. These jumpers, I kind of explained something in the last section. Jumpers JP1, JP2, JP3, and JP4. Now you see how JP1 is to the right here, JP2 is to the left, JP3 is to the right, JP4 is to the right. What you're going to want to do is take JP4 and move it to the left, just one pin. That's going to offset each jumper just like this and not like this. So I kind of showed you guys on the control board itself earlier, but this is a better representation of it. Once you've changed the jumper and inserted the SD card into the slot, you can boot up the miner. Now, when you boot up the miner, you're going to want to pull up a LAN scan or some sort of scanning device. You're going to do a scan. It's going to pull up some new IP addresses. Find the IP address for your ASIC. It's going to be one of these. So I found it for mine. Go over here. I'm going to type it in the box up here, and it's going to bring me to my page. I've already got my page set up, so my dashboard is already figured out. When you guys get to the sign-in page, the password is generally root, and the username is generally root. So you can switch those after you're done. Now, I'm in my my dashboard for my S9. This is great. I can monitor it. I can see what it's doing. I can change the status of the machine. You know, make sure it's overclocked or underclocked depending on my needs. But we need to edit the pool information. You need to have something to put in these pool information. So what I do is I actually use Brains OS or Brains Pool. So when I went to Brains, I created an account, and they gave me this dashboard. Now I have to pay for this. There's a 2% fee that I have to pay, and I also have to pay for the OS. But you do get a discount for certain things. I'm not exactly sure how it works. Don't ask me. Anyways, so you can see your payouts. You can see like your Bitcoin account, like where it's getting paid out to, a bunch of other things. You can see how much money you've made. See, I've made $51 in the last 3 months running this thing. But to get pool information, you're going to go to workers, you're going to connect workers, and there's all your pool information. Just put that in the, put this here, in here, put your username, put your password, add. Super easy. If you want to add another pool, you can add as many as you want. I recommend at least 2. So I've got Brains Pool and Ocean Pool. Ocean Pool is super easy. All you have to do is type in Ocean Pool. Ocean Pool, get started mining Ocean. There's all your pool information. Type that into your pool information right there. Boom. Make sure that you get your wallet address properly informed in there, and you're done. Now that you have pool information, you can go back to your dashboard and you can actually monitor your machine. So to underclock or overclock, you just go to this page here and you're just going to change the power settings. So is it 1500, which is a normal run for the S9? We're gonna take it down to 1000, which drops the sound down by quite a bit, drops the terahash output by about 5 terahash. Not the worst thing in the world, but it does heat my home, so we're happy about that. Click save, quick actions, restart the miner, and you're done. That's it. So now your machine should be running on OS or Brains OS. You can see the dip there where I shut it off, and it's actually going to come back online here in a second and jump back up. So yeah, that is how you guys install Brains OS on your ASIC, on your S9 specifically, and how you enter the pool information and monitor the machine. So I will keep this open on my computer. I'll monitor it throughout the day. When I come back, it is what it is. There are some softwares that allow you to monitor all this stuff from away from your home, from away from the network. Foreman is a great example of that, and maybe we'll do a demo of how to use Foreman along with all of this. But as it stands right now, you guys should have a good understanding of how to install Brains OS or another type of OS on an SD card and flash it to the machine. So, all right, guys, we'll see you in the next part.
All right, guys, so really easy, really simple. This machine is not a difficult machine to figure out and to get it up and running. I've showed you guys how to tear it apart, clean it, how to make sure that nothing's really broken on the machine when you get it in. I showed you how to swap over the jumper cables on the CPU, and I've showed you how to download and install new firmware on the machine. So, you know, it's not something you guys have to be like super scared of. It's not something that you're like, oh man, that's really technical and really in-depth. It's not something that I'm going to be able to do. It's like, actually, you can do it. I would say if you could drive a car, you could figure out how to do this. So it's pretty simple. It's just a little bit hands-on and technical. So you have to do a little bit of research and a little bit of homework before you really get into it and start doing it. But my whole point behind this video was just like, this can be done by anyone. You don't need to go and get a fancy housing unit. You don't have to get different fans. You don't have to do anything other than underclock it, get it quieter so that it's not making as much noise, and that's where the firmware comes in. But like it's a really simple process. It's not something that's super difficult. It doesn't have to look pretty. You can spend the extra money and get all of the stuff to beautify it, but I'm not that type of person. I just wanted it to work. So I literally just set this on my washing machine at home, plug it into the wall, and it spits out heat. So it's pretty cool. I really enjoyed it. This was my first ASIC miner, or ASIC heater is what I'm going to call them from now on. And it really helped me understand Bitcoin mining, how it works, how to connect to a network, how to connect to a pool. It really helped me understand a little bit more about computer components because I am not an IT guy. I'm not a computer guy. So anything on the computer board, it really confuses me sometimes. So just know that like if I'm confused and I can do it, I know that you can do it too. It's super easy. It's not difficult. And even if you're not using an S9, if you're using an S19 or an S21 or even a Avalon style machine, I'm not really familiar with their machines. But the process is very similar. It's a simple process, and you just have to do a little bit of research before you actually jump in and dive into it. And I would hope that most of you are the type of people that like to do research, because otherwise we're kind of up shit creek without a paddle here. So don't go out and spend a couple $1,000s on a machine if you're not going to do the required research that is needed in order to get this done. I'm sorry if you guys can hear that in the background. I'm really hoping that it doesn't come through the microphone. So anyways, that's the S9. That's my ASIC heater. And really, that's the episode. I hope you guys learned something. Keep in mind, guys, that, what you, like, your idea, your vision, what you want to accomplish is really going to play into what happens and how this whole thing works for you. If you're trying to reuse the heat and you're trying to make your life a little bit easier to maintain, then I'd say, like, let's get into Bitcoin mining heaters and stuff like that. If you're really trying to just get into mining, you don't really care about the heat, you've got a good power rate, all that stuff, you don't really need to worry about all the little things that I mentioned. I mean, the power requirements, living situation, all that stuff is still the same. Maybe you want to go a different version. Maybe you want to do immersion versus hydro or air. We'll talk about those in the future. I'm not going to really dive into it too much in this episode, or I'm not going to dive into it at all in this episode because it's not pertinent to this. But they do make really cool things, cool units and stuff like that if you wanted to go immersion or hydro. This one is an air-cooled unit, and the reason I'm doing air-cooled is because I need the air to be warm so that I can actually use that hot air for other things. So my next big project after I finish the ASIC S19 heater will be making an ASIC ASIC infrared sauna. That's what I'm going to do. I want to play around with trying to figure out how to do that. I don't know if I'll be able to get it in here, but if I could get a S19 or something like that, hook it up to a tent and an infrared light, boom, we got a sauna. So that's going to be my next big project that I might start tackling next year. Right now I'm working on the ASIC heater, and it's taking a little bit out of me. It's taking a little bit more time than I had thought that it would, but gathering all the parts is kind of a little bit of a spendy process. So, when you're getting into this, plebs, keep in mind that it's not cheap. Things are expensive, and so we want to make sure we do the right steps, the right things. We take necessary precautions when we need to, and make sure that we're not screwing ourselves in the end. So that is the S9 ASIC heater. That is how you clean them, hook them up, set them up, get them connected to the network, and start hashing. Guys, I appreciate you for watching this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. Follow me for more. Comment on the video. You can hit me up on Nostr, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. I really appreciate messages. I want to hear you guys' feedback. I want to know what you guys thought about the show. Let me know if there's something I missed. Did I miss going over something? Could I have done a little bit of a better job? This show is supposed to be teaching you guys. I'm teaching myself, I'm learning, but I'm also supposed to be showing you guys. So if there's a concept or something you didn't understand, reach out to me and I will help break it down even more. If you're having an issue finding your electric rate, like your power rate, send me an email. Trevor@scottscryptomining.com. You can send me an email there and I will respond to you. Okay. I always respond when I see those emails. I'm not the type of person that doesn't look at comments. I'm not gonna get upset if people make weird comments or bad comments or stuff like that. If they didn't like it, it's just, it is what it is. There's gonna be people that like it. There's gonna be people that don't. So with that, guys, we're gonna have another video coming out in another week or so. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do for that video yet, but we will be getting another one out, and I hope you guys have a great week, a great, month or whatever. I hope that you guys come back for more, and until next time, guys, I'm your host, Trevor. This was the Build a Mine podcast. Together, we're going to build a mine, and we'll see you next time.
Please note, the Build a Mind podcast provides information for general educational purposes only. This information should not be construed as legal, financial, or investment advice. We do not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information presented, and we encourage you to consult with a professional advisor, legal advisor, and/or financial advisor before making any financial decisions. The Build a Mind podcast and its affiliates are not responsible for any losses incurred as a result of using the information provided.